Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Redeem Her Time podcast. I love getting to bring on amazing guests who are going to help us think and do something different when it comes to our business. And today we're going to be looking at message before marketing and how that helps us to attract clients in less time without all the hustle. Because let's be honest, we're spending a lot of time attracting clients and often a lot of effort is going out for sometimes less return than you would really like. So Jennifer is here today. Jennifer Kok, I'm so glad to welcome you to the Redeem Her Time podcast. Tell us a little bit about you and just what you're juggling. What does the season of life hold for you?
Well, thank you, Lissa, for having me on today. I'm always love being in your world and love your messaging as well. So I am a serial entrepreneur. I have been an entrepreneur for 25 years. This is my third business that I am building, which is a profit and growth advisor. I'm a business coach, and I work with women entrepreneurs, and we really focus on the strategic, smart decisions that are on your desk right now. And
Hmm.
how do we make those decisions so that we can continue to transition your business forward? So that's what I love to do. I'm not quite an empty nester, but almost. Our youngest is in college. So my husband and I are dipping our toe a little bit into what that's going to look like. We have grandkids, and I'm just in the season of I'm not hustling anymore. I've done that when I built my first business. This is what I call my encore career, where I get to pour into others, and I just love it.
Yay, I love it, right? What a great season. And I love that it's a time that you can still be building something and make it profitable and yet also have time for the people that matter to you, especially as they're leaving the nest and, starting their own families and things like that. So what a beautiful season. So tell us a little bit about the work you're doing now. And I would love to hear maybe a little bit of the story, like how did God bring you from the hustle place to not only the work you're doing right now, but also the way in which you're doing it. And I love, that you talked about there being strategic, smart decisions, because I think we waste a lot of time on, a lot of decisions that really are not strategic or not smart. And so I'm wondering if there's a story for you behind that and maybe how you learned the hard way or how it is that God brought you to this.
Well, it's been 25 years that God's been writing my story, and He was writing it before I even realized He was writing it. I left a really good corporate career to start a business because back then in my corporate world, in order to promote, you had to relocate.
Okay.
And my husband and I had moved 3 times in 6 years. We
Mm.
had a 3-year old at the time when I left that job, and we decided we just didn't want that life for us. I applaud those that are out there doing that, but it wasn't what felt that I was called to do. So I left that. I started a business called Cookies by Design, literally opened my doors, and 2 days later delivered my second daughter.
Wow. Talk about no
Yeah.
excuses.
No excuses. Obviously, did not know what I was doing. The business that I was starting was a service-based bakery. We focused on these cookie gifts and corporate gifts and things like that. And my husband literally picked me up from the hospital with baby in the back seat, and cookie bouquets in the back seat, and we delivered them on the way home. I got up the next day with my newborn baby and went into work, into my business. And that was my start to entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
And I would love to tell you that the 20 years that I owned it were glamorous and they were linear and we just grew. But of course, that's not how entrepreneurship is. It is a roller coaster.
It
But
is.
I did end up owning it for 20 years. I sold it for a profit. And along the way, I had challenges, I had decisions that I had to make, such as do I pick myself up and keep going because at the moment I'm just so tired and burned out? I had to weather a recession where we ended up pivoting. And during that recession, I created a national brand called Cupcake by Design. So it was just so interesting how these challenges would arise. And at that time, you're kind of faced with, okay, what do I do with this?
Mm.
Do I sit here and hope it goes away? Do I, persevere like most of us do? Do I hustle through it more? And so I just started to notice that each step in front of you is an opportunity, but we have to take the opportunity when the door is open. And there's a lot of mindset and a lot of things that come up for you when you're doing that journey. So I feel like my 20 years of owning that business is what brought me to here. So now what I do is I am a business coach, I'm an advisor. I work with service-based entrepreneurs and I'm helping them journey through these ups and downs.
Mm.
All these decisions that are on your desk every single day. And we get really good at avoiding the decision
Right.
that we're supposed to be making. We get really good at that.
Yeah.
And so I help you focus, I help you have clarity, but we're also talking about business strategy and ways to save time. But my focus is profitability.
Mm.
I want you to build a profitable business where you can pay yourself more every month, because as women, we struggle with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I also have a passion for helping people build to last. I am one of 10 making it to 20 years. The statistics are tough for small business. And so I am an advocate to help you build as long as you want to be building.
Wow. I love that. What a journey to go from like literally days before giving birth to growing and selling as a national brand. And now I love it. Sounds like your hindsight can be oftentimes the foresight or the coming alongside sight for people who are building businesses right now. Just as you were talking about, I wrote down each step in front of you is an opportunity. I remember being at a decision point in my life several years ago. And I remember talking to my grandfather, who was so, so wise. He was the person that I would go to for those, mentorship type conversations. He was an advisor in that respect. And I remember having this conversation with him. I remember him telling me, Lissa, just because there's an open door doesn't mean that you're supposed to walk through it. And I just wanted like God to either open the door or close the door so that we could just get past this, fork in the road and figure out what direction we were going. So I'd love to hear maybe what were some of the key lessons that God taught you along that journey, whether it's about leadership or stewardship or profitability or sustainability along the way that really impacted, who you are, how you do business, and how you're helping others do business.
Oh my gosh, I have lots of them. I think at first, when we first start a business, we're really focused on revenue. And of course, we need revenue. That's the gas in the tank, right? We need that to to be able to fund our businesses. But we get to a point in our journey where we're so focused on revenue. And I think it's because it's the vanity number. It's the one that you see on social media. It's the one that people are talking about. Oh, I'm a six-figure business. I'm a seven-figure business. And it took me a crisis in my business to wake up and realize that is not the most important metric in your business.
Okay.
So there was a day I was about 4 years into my business, and things were at that point going well. And my husband and I were in the car with our two daughters at the time, and we were heading on a vacation for the weekend. It was a Friday morning. We were getting away for the weekend. We were driving, and my phone rings, and my cell phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's my manager. And I could just hear this hesitation in her voice, like she didn't know how to tell me the news. And finally, she just blurted it out, and she said, "Our paychecks are bouncing." And I thought, oh my gosh, what? Like I was so humiliated. I was so embarrassed because
Yeah.
my they were such hardworking people. And I thought, oh no, they're not going to get paid. Well, then to make matters worse, we didn't have cash reserves. We didn't have extra money we could pull from. So we literally pulled over to a small bank in a small town between here and our destination and had to take a cash advance out on our credit card in order to fund my employees' paychecks. And
Which you do
the
as a business owner when you have to, right? But I can imagine
yes,
that was that wake up call for you.
it was a huge wake up call for me. And it was also humiliating.
Mm.
And it was also, and then all that self doubt starts coming in, right? Like, who am I to run a business? How do I know what I'm going to do? I'm not cut out for this. This is ridiculous. I'm just going to quit and go back to doing what I was doing. And I can remember looking at my husband saying, don't worry, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to hustle more when I get back to the business on Monday, and I'm going to go find some more business because that was the mentality that I was in.
Yeah.
And the irony of that is our revenue was going up. Revenue was good. We were growing year after year. But that's all I was focused on. I was just focused on the revenue. I was borrowing from tomorrow's sales to pay for today's business.
Okay. Wow.
And so the wake up call there was there's more layers to a business than just the top line number. I had to skill up. I had to bring people in my world that would teach me how to skill up. And God built us for community. But for some reason, as business owners, we act like we got to do it all ourselves. And that if we raise our hand and say, hey, I need help with cash flow, I don't know what I'm doing here,
Mm.
that's a weakness. And it's not. We're meant to build together. We're meant to bring people into our lives. And so that to me was a very pivotal moment. And so from there, I learned how to manage cash flow. And part of that is back to that avoiding decisions that we don't want to make is I was avoiding the numbers because I had to make some hard decisions in order to
Right.
make the cash flow work.
Sure. Yeah. So let's go to a definition. I was a former English teacher, so I love making sure that we're all thinking about terms in the right way because I think you're right. We hear revenue, we hear profit, but what I hear you saying is there's a difference. So would you let's kind of start there. What is the difference between revenue and profit? And then we can talk a little bit more about what happens when we focus on one over the other.
So revenue is every sale you make. Every sale you make, if you sell $1, you have $1.
Okay.
But of that dollar, we have all these things that have to fund our business, such as rent, employees, the cost of goods to either produce the service that you're providing, such as subscriptions and websites and things like that. And so at the end of the day, when we're all done pulling out all the costs from this dollar, we're left with 10 cents, 20 cents, and that's our profit. And so when you're focusing on the bottom number, what's left, that's the cash. That's what's going to give you that opportunity to invest back into the business or to hire someone else to offload something that's maybe dragging you down, your energy, your time. And so you really, when you focus on the bottom and build up, you are building a strong foundation. The profit, I always say the profit is the foundation of your home. You go and you build a home and, it's cinder blocks or whatever, cement, it's holding up your home. And then the next floor is, the fun stuff, the kitchen, right? Well, what do we like to do? We like to run to the kitchen. We want to see all the gadgets because that's fun, that's shiny. Well, that's revenue. But what's holding up the house, nobody runs to. They're not super excited to go there first. That's profit. So profit is really what's left over, and it's all about cash flow. And when you're looking at your business, most of us look at what we call our profit and loss statement, which shows what's coming in and what's going out. Well, that tells you what happened yesterday and before. When you look at cash flow, when you look at profit, that tells you what's going to come next.
Okay. Yeah.
So
And as
it's
business
really,
owners, we need to be looking back, but also, probably more looking ahead.
yes, yeah.
I've often heard it described, when you're driving, the windshield where you're looking forward is very large because that's the direction you should be focusing if you want to go in a certain direction and end up at a certain destination. And yes, there is a rear view mirror because we do need to look and see, what's behind us and where we've come from. But notice the difference in proportion between those two, vantage points and where it is we're looking if we're wanting to move forward. So interesting. So let's talk a little bit about what really is happening in so many businesses, right? Like I work with women. Most of them at this point are solopreneurs. So they're wearing all the hats. They're doing all the things. They may not even have a team yet that they're paying, or maybe they do have some people, or like you said, maybe they've got a bunch of different platforms and subscriptions that are, they've invested in. Why is it that so many women who are running businesses are working hard and maybe even bringing in revenue, but still feel like they're overwhelmed, they're inconsistent, they're stuck? It's just this like hard place to be building business.
So I call the solo entrepreneur the octopus. The
That's
octopus
a
has eight
great,
arms.
yes.
Yeah. The octopus has eight arms and they are juggling something in every single one of those arms. But the thing about an octopus is they don't have a long longevity. They do not live for a long time. And if we stay stuck there, we are probably going to have a hard time staying in business long. And I know that seems harsh,
Yeah.
but what happens is you are going to grow weary, you're going to burn out, and you're going to stay in that vicious cycle.
Right.
So the cycle becomes, okay, what's next? The next phase, once you're no longer an octopus, is you move to being a business manager, where you start to manage the business
Okay.
instead of the business managing you. And so a lot of times I think we get stuck there. It's not because you don't have a great product. It's not because you don't have a great service. It's not because you are failing. It's because you're either have a hard time letting go. It's a mindset more than a business strategy. And we have a hard time letting go. We have a hard time delegating. It's our baby. This
Right.
business is our baby. But the reality is you are not meant to have eight arms because there's no way you are good at all eight of those. And when we stay focused on the tasks and juggling everything, we're losing opportunities because we're not out there getting more sales, growing, looking at our business from a big lens, like what is working in my business, what's not working. We are just reacting. And when we get really busy, when we're in seasons of business, we all know business is a roller coaster. We got those months that are great, and it's like, wow, this is the best month ever. Well, when in those seasons, we react by hiring quickly. Maybe we shouldn't have hired that person. We're not looking at the big picture of all the numbers and what it's going to cost us. We just need to get some help in here because we're just drowning.
Right.
Or, we get into a season where there's a lull, and so then we panic and we start feeling like, oh my gosh, this isn't working. Where did everybody go? And so then we quickly add another product or service that costs us money and time when maybe we didn't need that. We just needed to, network somewhere else or do something differently to get more people in. So that's when you start reacting because you're doing everything.
Right. Right.
So how do you get unstuck? Well, this is a time when you really need some clarity. And you really need to go back into why am I doing this? What is my why? And what kind of business do I want? We don't all have to have big businesses. We're not all meant to go build $1 million businesses, and that's okay.
Right.
But we want our businesses to be profitable. We still want to get paid. Every month, you should be getting paid. And so when you're stuck in this cycle, something has to change. And it's really hard sometimes to see what needs to change because I always say you are inside the jar and you can't read the label.
So true.
So
So
this is
true.
when you get some outside counsel.
Yeah.
And we struggle to invest in ourselves. We really do. But this is a critical time because if you keep on this path, what is going to happen is eventual burnout. And that is real for business owners. And that is why a lot of them choose to leave their businesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get some outside counsel to help you see what you can't see.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Someone who's been there, who's, has some of that, life experience as well as wisdom to show you what you can't, to see what you can't see, to do what you don't think you can do, to make those decisions that you're avoiding, like you said. So I'm curious, so like you're mentioning like, it's not always a revenue issue when people are struggling with profit. So why do you think so many business owners struggle with profitability, even if they do have good revenue coming in? Are there just so many? I mean, my clients tell me all the time, like, listen, there's another shiny object in my inbox, and this other thing that I need. We have too many, quote, trinkets that we've, opted into for our business thinking it's going to help us and it's really just costing us. Why do we sometimes struggle with profitability, even if we have money coming in?
So there's a few different things that I see. The first one that I see most commonly is we're not priced for profit. We're priced to get a quick sell.
Yeah.
Or we're priced because so and so prices themselves that way. And that once again comes down to your internal, like the confidence that you have. And it's hard. It's hard to price yourself for profit, especially when you get started. So that's usually the first step is you need to evaluate your pricing and you need to evaluate your packages and what you're selling. And what I see a lot of times with service-based is as women, especially, we are fixers, we're givers, we just want to serve. It's our business, and we worry about what people might say or think. And so we don't pay ourselves a fair market wage. So let me give you an example. I worked with a gal who was an interior designer. So an interior designer, a lot of that is her time.
Right.
She's out there, designing for you, picking out colors, shopping for you, doing all that. Well, she would put together this package and she had it. And I said to her, you need to track your time. And she looked at me like, I don't want to do that. That sounds awful. I said, just trust me on this, track your time.
Yeah.
By the time she was done from start to finish with that project, she paid herself $2 an hour
Wow.
because she didn't feel like she could charge more. And that, once again, is why you need community
Right.
because it is hard to make those decisions on your own. I get it. I've been there. It's hard. But you are not going to go work for another interior designer and they're going to pay you $2 an hour. So start there. If you are offering a service-based business, track your time and then pay yourself what you'd have to pay somebody else. Is it $25 an hour? Is it $30 an hour? And make sure that's part of your pricing and your packaging. So that's one of the first things I see that erodes profit. The second thing I see is your expenses get out of control because we get excited.
Yeah.
Somebody comes along and says, "Oh, I got this really good social media idea for you, and it's $700 a month," and you're like, "Okay, here you go. I'm going to do it, and this is going to work. I'm going to do this one thing, and that's going to bring people in." So we have to pay attention to where we're spending our money and where our expenses and all those subscriptions. Holy cow, we can get caught up in those quick.
Yes.
We got Canva, ChatGPT, Claude, we got all these subscriptions, right? So be careful of what you're spending money on is the other thing. And then the third thing is the cost of the yes. I spent a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of energy saying yes to things I was not supposed to say yes to. And it's hard to say no, but we are not meant to serve everybody, and we are not meant to have 25,000 different options and packages and products for our clients. They don't need all that. So I don't know, I was probably about 10 years, maybe 8 years into the business, and we had cupcakes. Oh no, probably a little bit further into the business. I don't remember exactly when. We sold cupcakes.
Okay.
And they were your good old gourmet cupcakes with lots of frosting, and they were delicious, and we would deliver them. Well, Shark Tank one evening showed this gal came on and she was going to do cupcakes in a jar. And the next day, my manager came into the bakery and we were all excited about cupcakes in a jar. We've got to sell cupcakes in a jar. So we just jumped in. I bought all these jars, which were expensive and, expensive to ship. Well, then we had to test out, we had to take our cupcake recipe and change it so that it wouldn't get moldy inside the jar.
Okay.
It took 6 months to test out this new product. We were so excited. We finally launched it and it was like, what?
Crickets. Yeah.
Yeah, we sold a few. And over time, we just kind of let it die a slow death. And then I sold a bunch of jars on Facebook Marketplace to get rid of all these empty jars. So that was the cost of a very expensive yes.
Sure.
And I jumped into it because I was excited. That's a reactive decision. Instead of taking the time to think,
Yeah.
what is my business model? What do my clients really need? They wanted deliveries. They wanted cupcakes they could, eat at a conference. They weren't looking to eat them with a spoon, on the go. So I was trying to create something that my ideal audience wasn't even interested in.
Yeah, but it sounded really exciting in the moment. So it's such a great reminder to slow down our yes. I love the
Yeah.
book, The Best Yes by Lisa TerKeurst.
Oh,
She
love
talks in
that book.
there about yes, every what is our best yes versus just a yes and the cost that it has. And that's what I'm hearing is you're talking about all these different things, whether it's the pricing or the expenses or the cost of the yes. I'm hearing there are a lot of hidden leaks, right, that can be draining out our time, our energy, our profit without us even realizing it. And we don't, as business owners, we're not in business to be leaking out like that. We want it to be profitable. We want it to be fruitful because we're here to steward what God has called us to. So let's kind of start turning towards, okay, so what can we do? I know you teach this message before marketing. Can you unpack a little bit about what that means and why doesn't it work when you do the marketing first without the messaging being clear?
So we live in a world that's really noisy. It's really busy. I think the latest statistic I saw is that we are bombarded with about 10,000 different messages every day from
Wow.
different brands. And back before, somebody had to see you like 7 times to make a decision. Well, now they need to see you 16 times in order for them to even remember that your business exists. So when we go out to the world and we just market, meaning, marketing really is the tactics, it's the platforms. It's the blog, it's the email, it's the social media, it's how you're getting out to your audience. And what's more important than that is the messaging because you need to dial in on who really needs your service or product. And I know this isn't new news, we call it niching or we call it your ideal audience. You hear it a lot in different terms, but there's so much fear around it that for a lot of business owners, they're so reluctant to do it. And trust me, I've heard it all. First of all, they're afraid that, well, if I just talk to a certain audience, I'm limiting my potential. Well, I don't know who I want to help. I want to help everybody. And when you first start, sure, go try that for a little bit. But you're soon going to realize that you're just saying, the same thing over and over, and you're not getting anywhere. You're not getting any traction, right? You're just chasing people. And so the messaging really has to be about who you're serving. It's not about you. Your customers, and I sometimes this sounds kind of sad or harsh, but your customers don't care if it's you or someone else that solves their problem. They just want their problem solved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to flip the script and make it about them. You have to message in a way like you're like a one-on-one conversation, like you're just talking to one person, be so specific. And you really have to narrow down who you want to serve. And I know it feels counterintuitive, but it works. So I worked with a gal who was a photographer. And she came to me because she was feeling burned out. She was tired of the evenings, tired of the weekends, just tired of going everywhere all over town trying to sell her photography services. And so we did a deep dive. We spent a few hours together. And what came out of that deep dive was that she had a flair for interior design. So we started going down that path, and she decided to market herself as a real estate photographer. It was bold, it was brave, it was tough to say, I'm no longer going to do senior portraits and babies and families. I'm just doing real estate photography. But I'll tell you what happened. She four times her revenue in 1 year and grew her profit with her revenue because now people knew exactly what she did. She
Yes.
was easy to refer. So people could say, oh, I know a real estate photographer.
Yeah.
Where when you say to somebody, oh, I need a photographer, everyone's like, well, I know. I don't know who to refer you because I know 10 of them, right?
Exactly. Yes.
And then she also saved 5 hours a week, we calculated, because prior to that, she was going to the chamber events and the networking events and this event and that event. Well, she cut all that out. She just went to women in real estate events. She went to other real estate events. She just networked with realtors. So she not only saved time, she grew her revenue, she also saved money because she wasn't driving all over. She wasn't going to all these things. She wasn't subscribing to all these things. So that is an example of how do you choose messaging over marketing. And choosing messaging over marketing means getting clear on who you want to serve and what their problems are. So they feel like you're just speaking directly to them.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm seeing and hearing as you get clear on the messaging, it's actually going to simplify your marketing. Like in that case that you just told us about, it saved her time, it saved her money. Does it also save us? Because I know here's the thing that we're all, nobody wants to feed the beast, the online beast, but yet there's this algorithm that, if we want to get seen, that sometimes we feel like we're putting so much time on. Out there to keep that thing going in our favor. Does it also have an impact on things like that, like not having to constantly show up in places like that online?
It does, and your message is clearer because you now know what you offer, and so you can really go deep into that, and so then people are attracted to you. So that's really where it saves you time. You're not sitting here thinking about what to talk about anymore because you
Mm.
know exactly what to talk about. And I think the other thing I see when it comes to this messaging over marketing is we get bored of our own messaging. We feel like we've said it 100 times, and why can't everybody know what we do by now? But you have to remember that beast, that algorithm might only be showing you once in a while.
Right.
And so what I see happen with entrepreneurs is we pivot too soon. We give up too
Mm.
soon. So, let's say we're selling this real estate photography, and if it doesn't start to bring in people, then we start thinking, oh, I better start adding in seniors too. And so then we start talking about something else. Well, we do that too soon before the
Mm.
breakthrough, and now we're confusing our audience.
Yeah.
So my suggestion is stay the course, like choose who you are serving, choose the problem that you're solving,
Mm.
and go so deep on it that you know everything about it, every single thing about what your client's going through. And then just talk about that for the next 90 days. Do not talk about anything else
Mm.
and give it time for people to catch on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great reminder because we hear it in our heads over and over and over again, but that doesn't mean that somebody else is hearing it. Or, like you said, they have to hear it so many times for it to really start sinking in and make sense for them. So, redundancy is a good thing, and it actually simplifies things on our side a little bit as well. So, I love that. Now, I know you've got a 9 pillar blueprint, so I don't want you to give away your secrets, but like kind of give us maybe this high level look at like what does your framework do and how does it help women build a business that's both profitable and sustainable? Because I think that's the other piece of it, and you mentioned this earlier too of not going back into hustle mode, especially, most of my audience, we are in midlife, right? And so we want to be present, as a mom with adult kids who have big life questions, as we have grandkids being born, as we're needing to make sure that we're caring for our own health and wellness in a way that maybe we haven't had to in the past. So that sustainability, I think, is really important in this season of life if we're going to be running a business as well. So maybe just kind of give us a high level of what that looks like. What kind of framework will help us with that?
So, what I have learned over the course of 25 years is I say there's 9 pillars that are holding your business up and helping you be sustainable, like you said. And we don't have time to focus on every single one every day. but they're kind of the framework. They're the blueprint, if you will. You're building a house, this is your blueprint. So they fall into buckets. One of them is the market demand, your customers, your revenue, your network, where, leaning into that. The next one is operations and the employees that you bring in, because at some point you're going to need help. It's not when, it's not if, it's when. And it doesn't mean you have to hire a full-time W-2 employee, but at some point you're going to need help. And how do we
Right.
navigate that? And how do we build systems that work for us? And then we talk about profit and impact. Because when you make profit, not only personally paying yourself every month, but your business, I believe you go on to do great things. It's not selfish to make money. And I think sometimes as Christian women, we think it's selfish to make money. Business is your tool to help other people, whether that's donating, whether that's, helping another business owner, whatever that looks like for you. And so these are kind of the buckets that these pillars sit in. And then the center is the focus and the decisions. And
Mm.
so when I work with somebody, we go through, I take the lid off the jar, you're in the jar, and I'm going to walk you through these 9 pillars, and we're going to uncover the leaks, the profit leaks, and the leaks of your time and energy. And we're going to uncover those hidden opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And again, we need someone who's outside the jar that can help us see the things that we can't see when we're on the inside. So let's connect the dots, right? I love, and you just referred to this just now, right? When we do this, we clarify our message and we build the right foundation, we make sure those pillars are solid, it does have an impact on our time and also our RODI, our return on time invested. So, what really shifts when a woman moves from that chasing that we often do, whether it's chasing revenue or chasing clients or chasing, success or whatever that is, to building a business that actually produces consistent profit. I love that you said you're paying yourself more every month. So there's stability, but there's also growth in that. What starts shifting, and how does that affect her time and also that return on her time?
The first thing that shifts is your confidence. A lot of us sit here and we wait for confidence to come first before we step out and do something visible or before we step out and do something with our business. But confidence is going to come after the results start happening. And once you have clarity, it's almost like this stress reliever. We walk around thinking about our businesses 24/7. Business and life are not siloed.
Right.
So a lot of the work I do is about how do we also build a strong life as far as health and wellness and decisions and mindset, and then a strong business with it because they're interconnected. There's no way you can avoid that. And when we are not clear, when we don't know where we are trying to go, when we don't have systems in place, what we're doing is thinking about our businesses swirling in our head, whether we're making dinner, walking our dog, or in our business. And so when you bring all this together, have a roadmap, have that blueprint that you can start to follow, what happens is the stress goes down, the joy goes up, and the confidence goes up. And when you're more confident, you're a little more bold. You'll walk into that networking room that you haven't been to before because you know you have something that's working. And by saying yes to a new client isn't going to drain you because you are set up for that. So it's really kind of this internal shift about how you show up and lead your business.
Yeah. But then that internal shift, like you said, is going to help you show up in that new way, which is going to have the external results that we're going to see because it's going to be coming from a whole different place. So I love that.
Apps. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we're winding up, I'm thinking we've got a whole spectrum of women who are listening today. We have those who are on one end of the spectrum, and she may feel overwhelmed, she's exhausted, she's stuck on the revenue roller coaster, or maybe she's like, revenue, I would love more revenue, but I just feel like I'm, over here talking to crickets and nobody's even paying me for my stuff. And then you've got the other side where somebody maybe does have revenue coming in and it's good, but she really wants to kind of increase the profit. So what would you say? Maybe it's the same thing to both sides of the spectrum. Maybe it's a little bit different depending on which side you're on. How would you speak some encouragement into the women listening today?
It's going to be the same for both camps. The first thing I'm going to say to you is take a deep pause, go make a cup of tea, and high five yourself. Because starting a business and building a business is not for the faint of heart. And it's not something that a lot of people do. So you are one of I think they say 40% now of women are starting businesses. But, applaud yourself first. And then the second thing I would tell you is to spend some time looking at what is working. As entrepreneurs, we're always what's next? What's next? Overachieving a little bit, that we never pat ourselves on the back and look at what's working, because that's going to help you either figure out what you need to build on or where you can get some more opportunity if you're that person who wants more revenue. Look at what's working and then take a deep dive into the different pillars of your business and, reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation to get you started in the right path. Just I'm happy to be a resource for your listeners.
Yeah, well, you've been such a great resource today. I've taken a couple pages of notes. There's so many good things to be talking about, and I know we've only just scratched the surface. So if somebody does want to learn more from you, they do want to get out of this reactive mode, and they do want to start building a business that's profitable and sustainable and that actually works and makes her feel like she's got freedom and peace and things like that, what would be a good next step?
I actually have a really good case study that I will give you the link to. And I take you through a client of mine who came to me. She was negative double digits
Ah,
in her profit, and we turned it around 342%. She now has cash in the bank. And I take you through the steps that we looked at. So that would be a great resource because your listeners could kind of, take those steps and look at their own business. And then I also have a podcast called Main Street Success Stories, where I interview a lot of different business owners that talk about the decisions they made. And that's a great resource. And just reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation and I can give you those links.
yeah, we'll make sure to put those down in the show notes. If you're listening today, make sure you go down there and check out how you can connect more with Jennifer. And all of that. And so we're excited to listen. I know if you guys love the Redeem Her Time podcast, definitely go check out Jennifer's podcast and we can, yeah, just continue to make this conversation happen. Speaking of which, my audience knows that we don't just end the conversation here because I love how God plants seeds to these conversations, but then it's really about, okay, how am I going to pick out what is the thing I needed to hear and what is the thing that I'm going to do about it? And so this is where I invite our listeners and our guests into the Redeem Her Time community where we can have some more conversation and really think strategically and intentionally about the things that we've heard and not just, chalk it up to one more thing I should do someday. So if you guys are not members of the community yet, come on over. The link will be in the show notes, redeemhertime.com/community. Not only do we get to interact with our guests and talk about what we're learning in the podcast, there's also a business directory in there. You get to talk about your business any day of the week. What are you sharing? What are you promoting? What's on your hearts? What are you asking? Somebody just recently asked a market research question as she's working on some messaging. So I love that we talked about that today. If that would be a good place for you to be asking some questions, then come on over inside there. Ask away. You're never going to be putting time out because it was the wrong day at the wrong time that you talked about your business. So we'd love to have you guys over there. We'll make sure we link that in the show notes as well. So thanks so much, Jennifer. I just really appreciate your time today, your wisdom, the way that you are guiding others through these strategic decisions as business owners. I know we can't do it on our own. And so I'm so thankful there are people like you that can help us along the way. And I always love ending with kind of a more personal question. This episode is coming out right here as we're on the cusp of summer, right? We're just a couple of days away from June and maybe a different change of scenery or pace or things like that for the coming months. So, if I were to ask you the question right now, here at the end of May, what is it time for? How would you answer that question as you're stepping into these summer months?
For me, the summer is about rest and fun. We have a family lake house, and my adult children and my grandchildren love to come and play with us. And I purposely design my business so that the month of July I can pull back.
Love it.
And so I hope to be floating in the lake with my grandbabies and taking them to the zoo. And, just really, this is my rest and recharge so that when I come back in August, I'm ready to hit the ground running.
I love it. It's kind of like a sabbatical, right? And I think as business owners, we often think, especially if you're an octopus, there's no way I can do something like that. But what a great example that you're leading, that we do need that extended unplugged time so that we can recharge and refresh and renew and then come back ready for what the next season holds. So thanks so much for living out with us today and talking out with us. And we will see you guys next time. And just a reminder, if you have a business bestie on your mind right now as we're having this conversation, you're thinking about that revenue profit conversation you guys are having, you're thinking about, wow, wouldn't it be great if we had a business that we could unplug for a month and, things didn't fall apart, then definitely come join the conversation over inside the community and share this episode out with those business besties. And let's help more women to build profitable businesses that are making a difference for the kingdom. So thanks so much, Jennifer. Appreciate you today.
Thank you for having me.